Native American. We have been called hostile. We have been called pagan. We have been called militant. We have been called many names. We are the hallucination. We are the human beings. The callers of names cannot see us, but we can see them. We are the hallucination. Our DNA is of earth and sky. Our DNA is of past and future. We are the hallucination. We are the evolution, the continuation. Hallucination. Hallucination. We are hallucination. We are the hallucination.
Hey, count those on the right. Check, check. Can you hear me? Hello? Hello, hello? Check, check, check. Yeah. Is that good? Yeah. Can everybody hear me right now? Awesome. All right. So first of all, I want to thank you for everybody for waiting and as we were setting up. But this is a very beautiful, actually, afternoon. The weather seems like it's with us as well. And we're going to start with an introduction about why we're here. Also, there's going to be some ceremonial openings. And during that time, please don't record the elders, that are sitting here, because it's very important that we are present, except that we have a few cameras that are rolling at this moment, okay? Other than that, I'm going to start, okay? Ready? All right, so, oops, I need my glasses first of all. So welcome, everybody. Mari Kompuche, Mari Pulmen. Hello people. Hello sisters and brothers. Hola gente. Hola hermanas y hermanos. Welcome relatives to our rally, Defend Indigenous Peoples Day in Philly. Woo! We made it! Yes. So my name is Mabel Negrete. I'm a Chola Andina Chipicunche of Gulumapo, Chile, and a longtime resident of the United States. I'm also one of the founders of IPD Philly and serves as the executive director for our organization. And we're here because we're deeply disturbed and outraged but the recent lawsuit against Mayor Kenny that attempts to restore Columbus Days in Philadelphia. And we want to take this moment for you to consider the following things. One, to inform you that my colleagues will go over our response to the frivolous lawsuit. Two, to debut that the mayor's office has already met with our organization and other Native American community members in the city to apologize for not including any of us in the decision-making of the executive order that replaced Columbus Day for Indigenous Peoples Day early this year. So you can imagine, like, we're pretty upset about that. Also, to inform you that we are now waiting for the mayor's office to confirm a path forward on two solutions that our organization and other Native American community members have collectively requested. So that's something that's going to be coming up, within hopefully within a few months from now. And we will be able to actually create some kind of press release or something like that once we get to that point. To inform you that we are also requesting council members to work closely with our organization. A, to build stronger relationships with the Lenape, Delaware, tribal governments in the homeland and in the diaspora. For those who don't know, the Lenape are the original inhabitants of this territory, and they're still here. And so there's a huge responsibility, not only for the city, but also for indigenous communities and allies to actually stand up for the Lenape, because it's been for too long that they have been ignored, and that can't happen anymore. And this is the time. Yes. To promote the implementation of Native American Indigenous Studies programs in the Philadelphia public schools. As you know, there's no such a school programs, and people at this moment, our youth, are not being taught the truth history, and it's like generations that have been gone through that. So this is also the reason why we have to deal with these kinds of racism, these kinds of discrimination, exclusion, even in 2021. This is very important because it's like, if our generations don't understand what happened, even here, what happened to the Lenape, how come are they in the diaspora, or even other communities are in the diaspora because they're no longer in their homeland? That's also a disservice to our future, no? And to ensure that Indigenous people's voices are involved in the decision-making process that impact Indigenous peoples citywide. Sometimes people don't forget about even the council people. They pass resolution and they put their names, and they say, oh, this will serve Indigenous peoples. But they have not done the work, they have not done the research, how the resolutions actually does not serve to Indigenous peoples. For once, there's a real minority in the city. Two, you cannot just simply say by population, or you can say, oh, but this region, then everybody will have the equal say. That's just not going to happen. And on top of it, we have to consider that there are indigenous rights in indigenous communities that have a right that other people who have migrated to this continent is different. They have the rights to their sovereignty, they have the rights to their culture, they have the rights to their and even the treaties that have been broken. So there's something that we also have to understand that, and that also will not happen until people actually understand the history, and that goes back again to their educational system. Our educational system also has been instrumental in, basically forcefully integrate or, forcefully assimilate Native Americans. So that's also something that needs to be taken care of. And then to support the recognition of Indigenous Peoples Day as a state and federal holiday. Now there's like over 130, I believe, cities who have changed, to Indigenous Peoples Day. Little by little, across the country, people are realizing that celebrating Columbus Day, it not only perpetrates indigenous erasure, but also it creates discrimination. It basically is telling inaccurate history, and it's a myth. First of all, Christopher Colombo never put a foot in this country. And when the Italian Americans started to celebrate Columbus Day, it was at the peak of the Indian Wars. It was at the peak where the indigenous communities from the West were facing massacre. So you have to also consider the context in which these policies and these celebrations take place, and why we're still celebrating, or why are we supporting tons of people or mayors or across the country. You know, that's also ties into other areas of discrimination, and also all of the communities, including African American, and even the people of color who have been migrated here later on. So unless we figure out how to change that collectively, if we're only fighting for a few to have change, you know, it's not going to change. We have to actually fight for everybody, and to be also to learn how to be allies as well with each other. To let you know that there are several ways you can get involved with Indigenous Peoples Day. We've been little by little building our organization, so you can go to our website. We have a way of where you can volunteer, you can become a board member as well. Also, how we will have also positions and other ways in which you can participate. And that is very essential and important for us in order to build our capacity, our power capacity, because this event actually would not even happen if it wasn't for all the people who put a lot of effort in the less than 2 months, I believe. You know, exactly. And who, you know, because we're all coming from different places, different backgrounds, different ways and skill sets. So this is super important because it's not going to change. We're talking about white supremacy. That's not going to change overnight, but it's going to change only if we actually come together and learn from each other. And also we have a petition that is going to be around. So if you have a chance, there's a table right now that has a way for you to use your phone, and immediately takes you to, you know, sign up the petition. Also, you can use go to our website, which is ipdphilly.org, or to linktree/ipdphilly. Also has a way of accessing to that petition. And finally, follow us on Facebook and Instagram, which is also IPD Philly, and help us spread the word, because it's super, super important that we actually come together. There's a lot of indigenous communities also from the South who are immigrant, or like in the West, also the border was crossed over them. So there's a lot of, you know, history, and also just to build the empathy and the sense of caring for each other, and also to live well, because that's also, if we have to take care of like how we feel with each other, how we take care of each other, not only materially but also like in our heart, in our spirit. So lastly, to say thank you for taking time to be in solidarity with Indigenous Peoples Day, and for being with us in this journey, because it is a journey. Because imagine if we want to change, have the entire state of Pennsylvania to change to Indigenous Peoples Day, replace Columbus Day. It's not going to take, you know, it's not going to few years. It's going to take a lot of effort from many sectors, many people together, and educate our communities. So think about it like 10 to 20 years from now, okay? It's important. And that's why it's so important to take care of our children, and our children will be able to pass it on to the next generation. With this said, you know, because it is time that Indigenous voices are centered in the city, it's also important that white supremacist ideology that give birth to the myth of Christopher Columbus is abolished, and for once and for all. Yes. Now, without further ado, I would like to introduce you to the Taino spiritual elder, Miguel Sage, who will open this rally with the invocation to uplift our spirits, and also the movement in which all of us are involved, and hopefully we will stay there for the rest of our life. Thank you.
Sene Kokakona, abundant blessings to all of you who have come to join us in this thing. My name is Miguel Sage. I live in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. The first thing I want to do is to congratulate the indigenous people of the city of Philadelphia for accomplishing what I would consider to be impossible. I have no idea when we in Pittsburgh will be able to achieve something like this. We got a statue of Columbus over there condemned. The mayor sent the people that do these things to wrap it up in preparation of bringing it down, and the reactionary forces in Pittsburgh slapped an injunction and a lawsuit very similar to the one that you're dealing with here, and the statue is still standing there. So the idea of us eliminating Columbus Day in Pittsburgh and replacing it with Indigenous Peoples Day is like, ooh. Second thing I want to do is I want to honor the indigenous people of this area, Lenni Lenape. My brothers and sisters, the North American Indian people that have always been here. The people of this land, the people that came, that arose out of this earth. Because they are generous enough to allow us, who come from other parts of the continent, to do these things. I am from Cuba. Cuba is one of the Caribbean islands, and we had the tragedy, the dubious honor of being the first ones touched by the horror of Columbus's so-called discovery. In my people's tradition, we honor the four directions just like my other brothers and sisters, because this was something that came to us from the Great Spirit, Yaya Wature, and we all share that tradition. In a little while you will see us honoring the four directions. I'm going to honor them in our way. We have four sacred foods, and these four sacred foods are what feeds our soul. The spirit of the South, a channel, represents open mind. The green squash, we use zucchini, but any green squash is what feeds that energy of open mind. So that's the gift of the South. The gift of the West is introspection, the ability to look within oneself and understand. And the color of the West is black, and it's represented by the black beans. That is the food that feeds us in the West. The spirit of the North is Rakuno, the spirit of wisdom. The food, the sacred food of the North is what we call yuca or cassava, or some people call it manioc. We weren't able to get any of that, so I put another sacred herb into that container to represent that spirit. And that feeds the energy of wisdom and experience in our people. Wisdom and experience in the North, open mind in the South, and introspection in the West, wisdom and experience in the North. And in the East, the color is yellow. And so we have the yellow maize corn that these corn chips that I have here are made of. The yellow maize corn, the color of the rising sun of the East. We draw the spirit, the gift of illumination and enlightenment from the East. That is what Sobaiko, the spirit of the East, gives us. From the earth, Atabe, the cosmic matriarch, she is the one from whose womb we rise. We are born of the earth. We are children of Atabe. She is given many names all over. She's called Pachamama in South America. Tonantzin in the Middle Americas. She goes by many names, but it's the same one. She is the Earth Mother, the Water Mother. We offer her our tribute because we come from her womb. You know, babies, when after they're born, after a certain time, they're weaned. They say they're weaned. So they don't need to nurse anymore. They can eat solid food. So from the human mother, a baby can be weaned. But There is one mother from which we are never weaned. We must suckle at her breast for our whole life, and that is this mother, because she is feeding us from her body throughout our whole life. So she is the mother from whom we are never weaned. In our tradition, she has another son. The great entity that celebrates, that represents life itself, Yokahu, the Lord of Life. His name, Yukahu, literally means breath of the yucca plant. The yucca plant is what corn is for these people here. For them, corn is sacred. For us, yucca is sacred. It fed our people. We make our cassava bread out of yucca. So if yucca is all life, yucca is all energy. So I'm going to do 3 songs now. This is my prayer. And I'm going to dedicate it to all these entities that I just named. The first song is to Atabey, the cosmic matriarch. She who is our mother, from whose womb we arise, from whose breast we are never weaned. Tairo tiwakiata, tairo tiwakiata, tairo tiwakiata, tairo tiwakiata. Areito today, areito atabey, tairo tiwakiata, tairo tiwakiata. And to Yokahu, the Lord of Life, he who is the child of Atabey, just like we are, we offer this song. Yokahu baba paora poti, wakia baba tureito. Yokahu baba paora poti, wakia baba tureito. Tairo ti bomatu, wakia baba tureito. Tairo ti bomatu, wakia baba tureito. Anghan katu.
Thank you to Miguel Sage for that beautiful invocation. Aloha kako. My name is Nikki Kalaniapana. I am of Native Hawaiian descent, and I am the Executive Assistant to Indigenous Peoples Day Philly. Before we begin, we would also like to acknowledge that the land on which we live and labor were stolen from the Lanai Lenape peoples and their descendants, who survived and remained in the homeland known as Lenape Hoking, and those in the diaspora, who were forcefully removed as far as Oklahoma and Wisconsin and to Canada. They are all still marginalized, even in the city of brotherly love. We also acknowledge that Philadelphia has a unique position in the nation's founding, and its successors are still responsible to uphold treaty rights for the land stolen and to correct the wrongdoings for the policies that led to the enslavement, massacre, and forced assimilation of indigenous peoples across the continent. And the effects of this colonial genocidal legacy is yet to be addressed. Let me introduce you now to the member of the Action Community team, who will read our full statement and will provide a brief overview of the lawsuit so you can understand why we are deeply outraged. Stephanie Mack is Dene Navajo, the co-founder of Indigenous Peoples Day Philly, and currently serves as Public Relations Assistant for our organization. Mahalo.
Indigenous Peoples Day Philly is deeply disturbed by the recent announcement of a lawsuit against Mayor Kenny in an attempt to restore Columbus Day in Philadelphia. IPD Philly supports Mayor Kenny's decision to abolish Columbus Day and strongly condemns state-sanctioned celebrations of Christopher Columbus. Columbus committed and condoned genocide by war, enslavement, sexual violence, human trafficking, displacement, demonization, and dehumanization of Indigenous Caribbeans, which became the framework for the colonization of the Americas. The celebration of such an individual is in direct violation of the rights outlined in the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples and other international agreements. IPD Philly expresses its disappointment in the Conference of Presidents of Major Italian American Organizations, Inc., and the 1492 Society, as well as fellow citizens Councilmember Mark F. Scola and Jody Della Barba, whose lawsuit draws on biased and racist representations of Indigenous peoples. Further, IPD Philly calls out the lawsuit's clear attempt to splinter the long-standing solidarity between the Indigenous and Black communities in our shared fight against white supremacy. Rather, IPD Philly uplifts and recognizes its Black allies, as well as the existence of Afro-Indigenous Black Native kin. IPD Philly expresses appreciation for the support received from allies, especially those of Italian American heritage, and further calls on all Philadelphians to reject Columbus Day. We're just going to wait for a second when the siren passes. Indigenous peoples have endured continuous attempts at historical erasure and genocide, and therefore understand the need to celebrate heritage. IPD Philly would never deny other distinct peoples the opportunity to celebrate their heritage. However, there is a difference between celebrating heritage and celebrating an individual who committed genocide. The abolishment of Columbus Day is not an attack on Italian American heritage, but rather addresses the violent character and heinous acts of one individual. The reassessment of monuments, statues, holidays, and other public commemorations are part of any society's process to reshape its values and to transform its public places into safe spaces for all. Historical figures whose commemorations are called into question are not and should not be judged by their heritage, but by their actions. Currently, there are 14 states, the District of Columbia, and over 130 cities that have changed the holiday name from Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day. IPD Philly firmly believes that celebrating Columbus is in violation of the rights of Indigenous peoples outlined in the United Nations. Our rights affirm that states shall provide effective mechanisms for the prevention of and redress for any form of propaganda designed to incite racial or ethnic discrimination against them. The continued exaltation of Christopher Columbus propagates inaccurate histories, unjustly ignores genocide, and reinforces inequities based on the biologically groundless notion of race. Furthermore, the social construction of race was and is an ideological tool of settler colonialism, and honoring Columbus works to perpetuate this same ideology. With this in mind, IPD Philly supports Mayor Kenney's decision to abolish Columbus Day. However, it is regrettable that Mayor Kenney did not include Indigenous voices in his decision-making process, disregarding our right that measures be taken in consultation and cooperation with the Indigenous peoples concerned to combat prejudice and eliminate discrimination. IPD Philly demands that Indigenous people are included in future decision-making that impacts Indigenous peoples in Philadelphia and the displaced original peoples of this land. IPD Philly calls for support to establish Indigenous Peoples Day as a state and federal holiday. We affirm celebrating Indigenous Peoples Day promotes the preservation and perpetuation of Indigenous cultures, celebrates the survival and resilience of Indigenous peoples, and educates the public about contributions of Indigenous people to our society. Right ahead.
Okay, thank you, Stephanie Mack. Next up, we have Tamara Anderson, a member of the Melanated Educators Collective and a collaborating partner of Indigenous Peoples Day Philly.
I am the adjuster, right? Hello, welcome. Can you hear me? Yes. So I am going to talk about the legal statement. Since I actually am wiping off the germs, I guess I can share my own. So I would like to say that the people suing the city, in this case, filed the complaint you shared in a federal civil court. This means that they are claiming protections under the U.S. Constitution and or U.S. civil rights law. We'll let that marinate for a second. They are using U.S. civil rights law, which generally supersedes state or local laws and regulation. However, it also sounds like there are similar state law cases going through the state court system, which may be worth finding and looking at the situation, which means we have to keep our eyes out. It means this fight isn't over, right? So one, it has to do with institutional discrimination by the city of Mayor Kenny against Italian Americans. Count 4, it says the violation of Philadelphia Home Rule Charter. The mayor failed to follow city regulations on changing holidays. Count 5, violation of separation of powers. Executive order is equivalent of a law and regulation that is traditionally the function of the city council in violation of state and city laws. Why it's very important that our city council representatives understand what this is, and the fact that one city council representative, who I will remain unnamed, is in the lawsuit. Count 6, it's a violation of the Sunshine Act. Local laws require procedure where multiple agencies who must allow for public participation decision-making process participate. But yet you did not let the indigenous peoples of this city participate. Count 7, violation of state home charter rules says Columbus Day is a state-mandated holiday. Count 2, it declares that Italian Americans should be a protected class, necessary to claim that they have experienced discrimination on the basis of ethnicity. Count 3, the judgment that the mayor's executive order violates, the Equal Protection Clause. These declaratory judgments are the judge's determination on the basis of law whether or not there was a legal violation. It also wants to declare that the executive order should be void. It wants to keep Mayor Kenny and the city from acting on their executive order to remove the Columbus Day holiday. They want to award attorney fees to the plaintiffs, and then to award the cost of proceedings to the plaintiffs. This is the core of the lawsuit.
Thank you.
Now I would like to introduce you to Kampalanetsi, a community of Aztec dancers who have been a long-standing community partner of Indigenous Peoples Day Philly and who arduously share in the city this amazing Aztec tradition that originated from Chichimeca and Tenochtitlan, Mexico, Mesoamerica.
kain wait lakamet. Dito datin tonatiu. Ikare wis lampa. Ay teheka sali, tuera, dotonali.
we have a line of Indigenous speakers and allies who will be reading statements why we are here today to defend Indigenous Peoples Day and condemn the celebration of Columbus and his genocidal legacy. I will begin by reading a statement from Reverend Norwood, tribal member of the Nanticoke Lanai Lenape Tribal Nation of New Jersey. As a citizen and past councilman and tribal judge of the Nanticoke Lanai Lenape Tribal Nation, I am also a Christian pastor and do cultural educational presentations and advise on Indigenous issues. Adopting an annual celebration of Indigenous peoples is a step in the right direction to embracing not only Indigenous heritage of the region, but the continuation and preservation of Indigenous culture that still remains. It is an opportunity to educate the general public about an often overlooked aspect of American history, confront misleading stereotypes, and provide insight as to the ongoing challenges and successes of the original people of this land. I completely support Indigenous Peoples Day. I have always maintained that the celebration of Indigenous peoples and a historically accurate review of Christopher Columbus's arrival in the Caribbean and the aftermath that followed are related issues. But they are indeed two separate issues as well. It is always unfortunate when the two are pitted against each other, causing unnecessary division, misunderstanding, and even psychological harm. There is indeed a need for civil dialogue and cooperation in order to promote an accurate view of history and be able to celebrate both Indigenous and Italian American culture in a fashion that is uplifting and builds bridges of mutual understanding and compassion. I pray that the 2021 celebration of Indigenous Peoples Day may lead toward reconciliation instead of division. Respectfully, Dr. Reverend Norwood, tribal member of the Nanticoke Lanai Lenape Tribal Nation of New Jersey. Next, we'll have Miguel Sage, who is Taino and a board member of the Council of Three Rivers American Indian Center in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and member of the Kane Indigenous Spiritual Circle.
Thank you again, my friends, my fellow citizens of the United States, you beautiful residents of the city of brotherly love, Philadelphia, all of you who are Indigenous and who support the Indigenous causes. I want to first make sure that I acknowledge the organizations that I represent. First and foremost, I represent the Kane Indigenous Spiritual Circle, which is a spiritual organization that dedicates itself to promoting and celebrating the tradition of the Taino indigenous people, who are my people, the first people of the Caribbean islands, who were the first ones that were touched by the dramatic tragedy of Columbus's arrival. I also represent the Council of Three Rivers American Indian Center, which is the Native American Center, the urban Native American Center of the city of Pittsburgh. And I bring you greetings from our city to yours. We're sister cities. We sit on opposite ends of the state, and we're united in this as much as we're united in many other causes. So from Pittsburgh, I bring love. The other organization that I want to acknowledge is the United Confederation of Taino People, which is the organization that represents the Taino people in the United Nations and in many other international bodies and organizations, headed by our cacique Roberto Bucaro Borrero, and represented for most of the time that this organization has been in association with the Tainos by our powerful sister Ty Pelly, who is here in spirit, and I bring you her greetings. She is a powerful woman Our people are matrifocal. And so just like the Senecas of where I live, of the Pittsburgh area, matrifocal people, our women are powerful representatives of the people. And Ty Pelly is one of the most powerful women's voices. And so I bring her greetings here. I thank very much Mabel and all of these wonderful people that have made a point of inviting Taínos, even if we don't live here in Philly, to participate in this event. I want to say from the bottom of my heart, Bo Matung, that means high gratitude, great gratitude to you, great gratitude. The Taíno indigenous people have always been historically an agricultural people that lived and live in the Caribbean, raising our four sacred plants. 3 of them are familiar to our North American brothers and sisters, corn, beans, and squash. But we have a 4th one, and that is our most powerful plant, yucca. Yucca is a root, a tuber, kind of like potatoes, but not quite. And it provides the Taíno people with the most powerful and the most important source of caloric energy. And that's why the spirit of the yucca, who is called Yucahu, is the divine spirit of energy and life. Because yucca is associated with life, associated with energy. Like I said before earlier, what to my brothers and sisters in Mesoamerica, corn is maize. They're the people of maize. For us, we're the people of yucca. And we value that power. When the Europeans arrived here, they set the people to work as slaves to grow yucca for them because they realized that it was more nutritious than their bread that they were bringing over from Europe. So they made our people work hard to feed them. They sat back and got all the glory. My people worked their hands to the bones, not only feeding them, but also working in the horrific mines. First mining gold, but when they realized that there wasn't really that much gold in the Caribbean, mining copper and other ores. People died in those hellholes, those mines. My people, my ancestors, my great-great-great-grandparents died in those hellholes. And when our numbers were depleted and there wasn't that many Taínos left to enslave, they went to Africa. And they brought people from there against their will. And they came to the Caribbean in chains, and some of them liberated themselves. They rebelled, and they ran into the mountains and joined the Taíno people in rebellion against their oppressors. And so the people of Africa who came to the Caribbean and the indigenous people of the Caribbean are brothers and sisters in the struggle. As they are here, we should always remember that. There were people of European heritage who joined in that struggle, and we thank them. These were people from the same country that brought the misery, Spain. People like Bartolomé de las Casas, who fought long and hard in my country, Cuba, exposed the horrors. If it had not been for him, we wouldn't know about the horrible things that Columbus and his thugs did in the Caribbean. He wrote it all down and exposed it. The Spanish called it La Leyenda Negra. It's a myth. It's not true. They tried to gaslight the world, just like his descendants, those descendants, right now are still gaslighting us. It's not true. They're accusing us falsely of attacking the capital. They were just tourists. They were just tourists. The Spanish conquistadors were just tourists. They really didn't harm anybody. It's not true, la leyenda negra. But Bartolomé de las Casas wrote it all down so that people would not forget the horrors of what was done in our Caribbean islands. And here, a white man, an Englishman, who belonged to a religion that considered every human being a friend, he made a bond with his Lenape brothers and sisters. And unfortunately, when he died, his descendants did not honor that bond. They did the walking purchase. And with that walking purchase, they dishonored their father, William Penn, who had made a lasting bond with the indigenous people of this land. And when he passed away, his children dishonored his name and his religion. And they did the walking purchase. They stole the land from my brothers and sisters here, from my Lenni Lenape brothers and sisters. Look it up. It's true. This is the history they don't want to teach you. They've got rules and laws coming up in all the states. Don't teach that stuff. It'll make us look bad. Look at all these states where these reactionaries are trying to pass laws so that they can keep the eyes of the children covered. Don't teach that in school. Yes. Gaslight, gaslight, gaslight. We didn't really do that. Yes, you did. Your ancestors did it, and you now support it. Your very life supports it. Deal with it. Deal with reality. It should be taught in the schools. It should be taught. You want to call up dates? 1492? Give me the date when the first African Americans were brought to the Americas. That's the project. I can't remember the date now, 16 something or other. Somebody please enlighten me. What is it? 1690. 1690. 19, thank you. 1619 project. To teach the truth of what happened in the Americas. And they're running around. No, don't teach that, don't teach that. We're going to pass laws to keep you from teaching that in schools. You shouldn't teach that. That's what it's all about. That's what this lawsuit is all about here. We don't want to hear the truth about Columbus. He's our hero. He's our hero. We don't want to hear the truth about our ancestor. Well, you know what? One last thing about Columbus. He didn't consider himself Italian. He was born in Genoa, a city that was actually a republic. They call it a city-state. Genoa was a republic, a democratic. This is in the 1400s. In the 1400s, it was a democratic place where people voted. He came from a place where he was a citizen. And you know what he did? He turned his back on it. He turned his back on Genoa. He stopped speaking Italian because Genoa would not give him the money to go around the world like he wanted to. So he went to a place that was a monarchy, a place where everybody was the subject of a high king who had the power of life and death over every one of his subjects. That's what he went to. What a democratic person. Wow, he gave up life in a republic to live in a monarchy. He moved to Spain, changed his name from Cristoforo Colombo to Cristobal Colon. From Italian to Spanish. Raised a family, named all his children with Spanish names, and died speaking Spanish. Badly, by the way, because he had a real strong Italian accent. Yeah, that's Columbus. That's your Italian guy. Turned his back on Italy. Something to be proud of. Hakakatu.
Thank you, Miguel, for reminding us that our history is truthless and Columbus is ruthless. And we are here to defend our rights and to inform others that Indigenous people are still here. Thank you. And that Columbus was a genocidal slave owner, rapist, and murderer that should not be celebrated. But what should be celebrated is Indigenous people's survival and resilience. Next up, I'd like to present Americo Mendoza Mori, Professor of Quechua at University of Pennsylvania.
Ayimpunchay, Imaynay Kashankichis, Wahikuna, Panaykuna. Hello everyone, brothers and sisters. Thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting. Thank you for showing presence. I want to share with you, for the people who are coming, for the people who are passing by, just some ideas about the celebration of Indigenous peoples. Do you know the names Anacaona, La Donna Bravo, Bartolina Sisa, Mama Okyo? If those names don't sound familiar to you, then it's because someone else's history is the one that is excluding other people's, excluding other cultures. But we do have the opportunity to change that narrative. We do have the opportunity to educate ourselves. We do have the opportunity to give the spaces like Indigenous Peoples Day at the city of Philadelphia. I want to ask you, and I need your response because I know you've been here for a while. And maybe because I'm a teacher, I like to ask people, who are coming here, are Indigenous peoples extinct? Are Indigenous peoples things of the past? Are Indigenous people here, present and thriving? Then let's change that day. Let's change that narrative. Then let's learn about Anacaona, about La Donna Bravo, about Bartolina Sisa, about Mama Okyo, and many leaders that crafted the history of this land. Lenape Hoki, Pacha Mama, Turtle Island, Abya Yala. Before I pass it on to another person, I just want to share with you a song, a fragment that honors the history of one of the leaders I mentioned you, Bartolina Sisa. This song is in Quechua language, the most spoken indigenous language in the Americas. 8 million people, more speakers than Swedish, more speakers than Danish. But why we know about Danish or Swedish, but not about Quechua? Because someone is erasing our cultures. And we gotta change that. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being an ally. Thank you for showing love. Bartolina Sisa Warmi, Kalpa Hina Kanki, Bartolina Hina Kanki, Yawarmi Amiya Suyukuna, Yuyari Kulku, Almiya Suyukuna, Yuyari Kulku. Bartolina Sisa Warmi, Kalpa Hina Kanki, Wartolina sisa warmi, ya warmi ki ya warmi tu, aniya suyukuna yuyari kuiku, aniya suyukuna yuyari kuiku. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Next up, I have the pleasure of introducing Tammy Walking Stick Riley, who is Cherokee and Lakota and has been residing in Lenapehoking since the early 70s. She has worked for the United Nations representing Native American issues. She has sat on Capitol Hill discussing Indigenous issues, and she continues to be a pioneer in the Philadelphia community, raising awareness and invisibility for Indigenous peoples.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? I'm going to speak briefly because I have someone that I want to speak a little longer than me. My name is Tammy Walking Stick, and I am the result of Native Americans being taken from the West and brought to Indian schools in this upstate Pennsylvania. My family, I don't know if you've ever heard of the Carlisle Indian School, but I am a result of that. My family came from out west and then came from upstate Pennsylvania, and my parents were civil rights activists. They were part of AIM. They were part of United American Indians of the Delaware Valley, which was started here in the early or the late 60s, 70s. I've been raised in my culture since I was born. I'm a mixed Native American. There are mixed Native Americans. I am actually Cherokee, Lakota, Mohawk, and White Mountain Apache. So I honor all my ancestors, and I even have some Brazilian in me. So I honor everyone for standing out here today and supporting us. I also I want to thank you all for just staying here and listening to us. It's not a lot of people, but it's enough. You make the difference, and I thank you for that. I want to honor the two ladies standing beside me. My parents are no longer here. They fought until their last breath for Indigenous rights, and one of the things they fought for was that statue down on Delaware Avenue, or I want to call it Lenape Avenue, to be taken down. So that's why I'm here today, because my parents are no longer here, and they fought to their last breath and said to me, make sure that comes down. So that's why I'm here today. The beautiful ladies standing beside me are my aunties. And you're my auntie if my mother or my father called you sister or brother, you're my uncle. So these two ladies behind me are pioneers. We are Native Americans that are in the community. We live amongst you. We're not extinct. We go to work, we go to school, we have jobs, we have corporate jobs, we have blue-collar jobs. We are amongst you. Just ask and you will find a Native American next door to you. So I won't speak too much longer, but these ladies behind me, I'm going to try to get them to say at least 4 words. They may not, but they have a lot of history. The history in Philadelphia of Native Americans is strong. I'm standing here because of it, and these ladies, although there are a lot of our elders have passed and crossed over, these two ladies right here raised me with my mother and my parent and my father. So I want to pass the mic briefly to them so they can introduce themselves to you. We have one beautiful lady from the Micmac people and another lady from the Navajo Nation and Cherokee Nation. So I want to introduce my auntie from the Cherokee and Navajo Nation first.
Sio. In Cherokee, that's hello. I don't want to address a lot of what repetition is. But Tammy hit a spark there when she said about the Carlisle Indian School. Not 2 weeks ago, even Saturday, I was there at the cemetery, placing flowers on the graves of little children who died while at that school. Now ask yourself, how can a child be taken from a family, put into a government school, run by people that want to take the savage out of you, cut your hair, hit you when you spoke your language? If you tried anything cultural, you were put in jail. In a jail, a child. There were babies at that cemetery too. I wonder where they came from. Think about it. Young children, young adults buried there. My heart was broken. I was bleeding inside. I just couldn't fathom what one human being could do to another because they didn't like the color or the culture. I say to you, here in America, yeah, you're on borrowed land, but we're all on borrowed time. So take your time and put it to good. Learn your culture just like we do. Learn where your roots are, because your roots are what's going to make you strong. Your roots carry you through so much. When we wear our clothing, when we dress, we are not only by ourselves, we have all of our ancestors with us. All of our ancestors, all of our women are with us today. Learn your culture, and most of all, respect. Respect. I respect you. You can respect me. It's not about the color of your skin. It's about your heritage. Hang on to that heritage, and it will make you strong. When you run into a wall, step back and say, Grandma, aunties, help me, and they'll be there for you. Take a minute to thank Creator for every day. You know, I'm not getting any younger. And people always say, how are you doing today? And I say, I'm on the green side, I'm blessed. I have another day. So be thankful. Be thankful. Be respectful. Learn your heritage. And always, always lean on your ancestors for support. Have a great day. Thank you.
Yes, I've been designated. The next beautiful lady coming up right here. This is one woman that I've always known to, she's going to say what she wants to say, and she's not going to bite her tongue. So I'm a little hesitant to bring her on, but she's a pioneer, and I love her, and she loves me, and my mother and her, they used to get in a lot of trouble together. So I want to bring up Miss Claudia, Auntie Claudia.
Wait, may darling Gisco. Hello, Estine, Mekjik Bibukwas. My native name is Mekjik Bibukwas. I'm from the Mi'kmaq people of Maine and New Brunswick, Canada, and all the maritime within Canada. My people has moved down here like maybe I was 2 years old, and I'm 72 now. We resided in New Jersey, and when I left home, I moved to Philadelphia, and I've done lots of traveling. But Philadelphia's always been my home. We used to have the UAIDD which was a legitimate federal funded an Indian community center. Unfortunately, we lost that due to a lot of political and stealing of money, but we wish we had that back again so we can have our young ones try into our community. But I'm one of the old ones that still lives here. We just lost a Lenape matriarch, and a couple of days ago, which broke everybody's heart. But we're still here, we're fighting, we go to powwows, we introduce ourselves, we fight, we fight, we fight. And people think we don't exist anymore, but we do. So thank you for coming, thank you for being here, and bless you all.
Next, I would like to introduce Chief David Hughes, who is Cherokee and the Principal Chief of the Eagle Medicine Band of Cherokees. He has toured internationally as music director, singer, Native American flutist for Carnival Cruise Line, and has served as spiritual advisor to incarcerated Native Americans for 10 years.
Ado. Chulugi. Kudibido chidoga bududi kanogisti doa doa. What's that? I don't. I'm even talking Cherokee to her, so I don't know if you understood what I said. That's all right. I'm very grateful to be here, and I won't speak very long, although I've been told I can. First and foremost, I want to give acknowledgement and recognition to these wonderful ladies and gent. Let's give the elders a round of applause. Let's give Tammy a round of applause. Pioneers made a difference, did the work, and continue to do the work so that we can stand here with that same mission. We are amongst friends. Valeska, I'm amongst a friend when I see your face out there. And I am just grateful that we come this far to see our people here still carrying on the work. I don't consider myself a protester. I'm more of a protector of tradition and culture. So, on behalf of all Indigenous people from the 4 directions, our ancestors, we stand together on this day in support of a change that has been a long time coming. And we are still doing the work. I want to just share this with the young people and the young at heart. Some people ask me in the community, well, I know about Indigenous rights, I know about sovereignty, I know about this, that, and the other when it comes to the path of Indigenous people. A lot of times our people feel helpless or hopeless, especially in this concrete jungle called Philadelphia. So what I do, I teach young people and older people alike that they do have weapons to fight back. Some of your weapons are right beside you, they're within you. You fight back by learning to speak your language. You fight back by participating with your culture and your people. You fight back by knowing the history of your people and knowing the difference between history and the truth, because there's a difference. So that's what I came here to do, is to support and to stand with all nations represented. I'm going to close. The elders asked if they can do a dance to honor this auspicious occasion, and I'm going to close with that. It's a women's traditional dance, and they came to share this, and we're going to go a step farther. I'm going to say this, that in many of our ways, in many of our different tribal ways, we dance for those who cannot dance. We dance for those who are not here. We dance for our ancestors. And we're dancing for those 215 children. I know you know who I'm talking about, so we're going to do a traditional dance, and may it touch your heart.
Thank you again, Tammy Walking Stick Riley and Chief David Hughes, for that beautiful dance and statement. Last in our lineup of Indigenous speakers, we have Jason Bigpond, who is one of our summer interns for Indigenous Peoples Day Philly. He is from Oklahoma and is a member of the Muskogee Creek Nation. He is also part of the 3 affiliate tribes in North Dakota, Mandan, Hidatsi, and Arikara.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Nikki, for the introduction. And before I truly get into it, I would like to thank IPD Philly, Indigenous Peoples Day, and then I'd like to say I stand here today as an ally for the natives of the Napehoking. In the recent years, we as natives have been the spotlight of social media, still trying to hang on to our ancestral homelands, protesting against the oil companies for creating injustice and violating our rights. But I stand here today to not talk about oil companies. I stand here today to talk about the man who started it all. The man who got lost at sea and washed up on our shore and then selfishly called us Indians. Philly and the rest of the United States have honored this man's legacy, a legacy that has involved killing, destruction, and enslavement of indigenous people. We as natives will no longer stand for this. We are still here, and our voices will be heard. The removal and replacement of Columbus Day is just a small step in the right direction and the representation of indigenous people and the respect we deserve.
Thank you so much for the end of our lineup, Jason Big Pond, of our Indigenous speakers. Now we're going to continue with some statements from allies and community partners. We're going to start with a statement on behalf of Bend the Arc Jewish Action Southeastern Pennsylvania by Elsa Coffin, who is a somatics coach, facilitator, and community organizer.
Shalom Aleichem. Ich bin Elisheva Halpin. Hello and welcome. My name is Elsa Halpin, and I'm reading a statement on behalf of Bend the Arc Jewish Action Southeastern PA. We, Bend the Arc Jewish Action Southeastern Pennsylvania, are in solidarity with Indigenous Peoples Day Philly and Mayor Kenny's Executive Order 221 to rename Columbus Day and recognize Indigenous Peoples Day Philly on the second Monday in October. As IPD Philly wrote in their statement, Columbus committed and condoned genocide by war, enslavement, sexual violence, human trafficking, displacement, demonization, and dehumanization of Indigenous Caribbeans, which became the framework for the colonization of the Americas. The lawsuit brought by the Conference of Presidents of Major Italian American Organizations, Inc., and the 1492 Society, as well as the council members Squila and Jody Della Barba, cites Christopher Columbus as a source of, quote, dignity and self-worth for Italian Americans. As Jews in diaspora, we feel the importance of cultural celebration, dignity, and self-worth. We assess Columbus by his actions as an individual, not by his ethnicity and heritage, and we know his actions reflect on him, not on Italian culture. It is dangerous to view one person as the representation of an entire people. We rise with Italian Americans who do not claim Columbus as a representation and source for their dignity and self-worth in their culture. We join in strong condemnation of state-sanctioned celebrations of Christopher Columbus. We know that seeing him celebrated publicly causes harm to Indigenous people. As Jews, it is not hard for us to imagine if we saw statues of Catholic inquisitors who oppressed our people in Spain and Portugal, or a day commemorating Nazi leaders. We would feel unsafe, unwelcome, and re-experience the horror of the denial of our pain and history. As Mayor Kennedy said, symbols carry power, and holidays and monuments are ways of marking time and space collectively in public. It is imperative that we tell the truth and publicly recognize the vast harms wrought by colonialism, chattel slavery, and all structures of white body supremacy. As Cornel West said, justice is what love looks like in public. We are here in solidarity with Indigenous Peoples Day Philly and join the call for the establishment of Indigenous Peoples Day Philly as a state and federal holiday as soon as possible. As IPD Philly wrote in their statement, celebrating Indigenous Peoples Day promotes the preservation and perpetuation of Indigenous cultures, celebrates the survival and resilience of Indigenous peoples, and educates the public about the contributions of Indigenous people to our society. Justice is what love looks like in public. Thank you.
Thank you, Elsa. Speaking on behalf of Bend the Arc Jewish Action Southeastern Pennsylvania, we greatly appreciate the solidarity of the Jewish American community. Next up, we will have a statement read by Tamara Anderson on behalf of the Melanated Educators Collective.
Thank you to Indigenous Peoples Day Philly for providing me the space to speak as an ally. My name is Tamara Anderson. I'm here representing the Melanated Educators Collective and the Racial Justice Organizing Committee. I wanted to start off today by discussing what the word ally means, as that's how I would describe myself, and is the reason I'm in this space today. Or even better, what the word co-conspirator means. Because an ally is classically defined as to unite or form a connection or relation with another group. But a co-conspirator is one who gets in the mud and the dirt with the other group, right? Co-conspirators show up and stand up. As a Black woman, I'm uniquely aware of the ways that white supremacy continues to show up in our society. It's what spurred the uprising last summer after the murders of George, Breonna, and Ahmaud. It's why we're here now to resist the lies included in the lawsuit against the mayor. As a co-conspirator, I read books. I gather primary sources about Indigenous history. I have conversations so that I can include it in my college courses that I teach. It's these readings and conversations with Indigenous peoples that I've learned what my schooling tried to hide from me. The behavior of the colonists against the native peoples of this land did not end in the Caribbean. Instead, it became a standard behavior of colonizers all over the Americas to Indigenous peoples as well, as the Africans brought here against their will. Knowing this history is utterly reprehensible, racist, and downright discriminatory for anyone to still be celebrating Columbus Day. Now, that's not to say that Italian Americans cannot have their holiday, but instead they should. It shouldn't just be one that's centered in the blood and enslavement of Indigenous peoples. As a Black woman, I will not allow for my Indigenous brothers and sisters to stand alone in this fight. Last year, millions of Indigenous folks around the world stood in solidarity with the Black community as allies and relatives to denounce white supremacy and uplift Black voices. And they have been in the fight ever since. If we are standing next to Octavius Cato's statue, where he was shot down in the square for fighting for voting rights, it shows that our world is more like a braid than these siloed communities. We are braided into each other, and we need each other. And they also shine a bright light on all the ways our issues overlap as a community, from police brutality to incarceration to simple erasure in American history and the overarching society. So when lies are put forth in the court of law, we cannot and will not allow our Indigenous brothers and sisters to stand alone. We must act. We must speak up. We must show up. And in doing so, we acknowledge that our reparations and our freedom is inextricably tied with the reparations and freedom of Indigenous peoples. Because, let's be clear, reservations are not reparations. Plainly put, we're not free until everyone is free. So I implore all the non-Indigenous allies and co-conspirators who stand in solidarity and support for our Indigenous brothers and sisters. It's the least we can do as we all continue to occupy their land. I want to leave you with this quote by Audre Lorde. We are powerful because we have survived. And that is what it is all about, survival and growth. Let's continue to survive. Let's continue to resist. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tamara, for speaking on behalf of Melanated Educators Collective and the solidarity and the interweaving of the Black and Indigenous communities and their histories. We will survive, we will resist, we will persist. And if one is chained, none are free. Next up, there will be a statement from Rebecca Allen, who is an activist and an officer in the Philly Black Students Alliance.
Hello everyone. I first wanted to thank the Indigenous people of Philly for allowing me to speak here on behalf of the Philly Black Students Alliance. And I'm here to talk about specifically what they teach us, because I'm still in the Philly School District. I'm a rising junior, so I know what they've been teaching us. And I promise you they have not been teaching us anything that will allow us to understand exactly what this man that they praise, Christopher Columbus, has done to indigenous people. They won't do anything as far as teaching us about how amazing and beautiful and intelligent these indigenous people are, and all they do is continue to perpetuate this idea of white supremacy and racism. So I'm here because we need Indigenous Peoples Day. We need to support and uplift Indigenous people and celebrate their stories and their culture. We need a day to remember the importance of appreciating the people who have the rights to this land. They were here first, the land that we walk on and thrive on, and it is because Indigenous people are not to only be celebrated on one day. No. It's a reminder that we need to celebrate them all the time. It's an all year long event every year, because they're not just here one day, okay, yeah, let's celebrate these people, because they like to take us to these different places. They take us to the houses, they take us and they tell us, oh, look, the Indigenous people lived in harmony with the Europeans who came. Last time I checked, racism and torture and exploitation and sexual harassment, that's not what I thought peace was. That's not, I don't think that's like a complete antonym. I guess they missed that lesson in their white savior English curriculum, because that's exactly what it is. And I wanted to talk about how it's important that we get this idea in our media too, because in the media, all they show us is that, well, actually, let me tell you about this research study that Dr. Beverly Daniel Tatum talks about in her book, Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together in the Cafeteria? Because there was an experiment done where they were looking at the perceptions of a group of preschoolers who had about Native Americans. So they asked these preschoolers, these 3- and 4-year-olds, to draw an Indian. They knew exactly what to do. They drew apparently an Indian, which, thanks to Christopher Columbus, is what indigenous people are known as when they are not at all Indians. They drew angry people with feathers and weapons. This is what they thought an Indian was, not an indigenous person, not a Native American. They didn't know what that was. They sat there stumped like, huh? But they said that an Indian was a person that was angry with feathers and weapons. And they got this from Peter Pan. I'm sure most of the preschoolers and young children and all different age children have seen a Disney movie called Peter Pan, because we all love the fairies and the pirates. And we don't know that, oh, this is just a perpetuation of white supremacy and the continuous narrative that white people are over all the rest of us. And they continue to tell us that Native Americans and they were at peace, that they don't tell us about the dismembering of the bodies of indigenous people. And they say, oh yeah, he didn't actually get here. But they don't tell us about the fact they enslaved Native Americans and indigenous people. They don't tell us how they stole their sacred crops, and they called them cash crops, and they're like, oh yeah, you can make sure that you go ahead and you do all this free labor for us, because it's gonna get money in our pockets, because that's what this was about. This was about money in their pockets. This was not about the people here. This was not about actually being there for the people who were already here. This was about just taking it all over and being like, yep, we here. This is exactly what this is all about. No. That's not how this works. Because these people are still here. They are here with us. They are here everywhere we go. But we don't know that because our education system tells us, oh yeah, they like going somewhere. Like we accidentally wiped them out because we came with like these diseases and we didn't know. We're so sorry. No, you're not sorry. So we need our education system to teach us the truth. Because they say history is taught by the winners. Well, I don't see any losers here. So there ain't no winners to be telling the history. They need to be telling the truth and stop sitting there like, oh my gosh, I'm so smart. And like, I did all these amazing things. No, absolutely not. Because it's not about, if it was just about embracing culture and embracing the idea of community, why would you choose someone who is a rapist? Choose someone who was a racist. Choose someone who exploited and tried to destroy and erase an entire group of beautiful people. That's not community. That is not celebrating culture. We can't celebrate the culture of one by completely acting like the existence of another is disgusting. That is not unity, that is not culture, and that is not community. So I'm here as an ally, as a co-conspirator, because indigenous people, we are standing on their land. And this is their land. This is where we are standing. I'm standing here, I'm as an African American. I have no idea where the heck I am from. But that's because they brought me here, okay? They brought my ancestors here. So we're standing here today, tomorrow, and the next day as an ally. We need Indigenous Peoples Day. Thank you.
Thank you so much again, Rebecca Allen of the Philadelphia Black Students Alliance. Next up, I will be reading a statement on behalf of an ally, Alex Greco. My name is Alex Greco, and I am a writer, artist, and educator born and raised in South Philadelphia, Lenapehoking. I am a second-generation Italian-American and a constituent of Councilmember Mark Squilla. I am appalled that Councilmember Squilla, along with other misguided individuals, has filed an ill-informed and frankly pernicious lawsuit which seeks to co-opt the language of important civil rights legislation to assert that changing the name and focus of a fraudulent national holiday from that of a genocidal settler, colonizer, and traitor in human lives to that of the very indigenous peoples he sought to exploit and eradicate somehow constitutes a violation of the rights of Italian Americans. I wholeheartedly condemn this outrageous and tone-deaf lawsuit, which is based on misinformation and willful ignorance. The embrace of Columbus, whose supposed identity as Italian is actually inaccurate and anachronistic, took hold because of highly fictionalized 19th century accounts of his life and propaganda promoted by Italian Americans in the 19th and 20th centuries as a way to combat actual religious and ethnic discrimination, and ultimately align themselves with the privileges and protections of whiteness in this country. To be clear, I stand in solidarity with the Lenape and Taino peoples and all indigenous nations and communities across Turtle Island and beyond. I believe the city of Philadelphia has taken a long overdue step towards justice in officially recognizing Indigenous Peoples Day. I call on Mayor Kenny and City Council to now deepen their commitment to the original inhabitants of this region and the many generations of their descendants who have endured and are looking to the future of their peoples and cultures by ensuring that Indigenous leaders are primary decision makers in such matters, and that decolonization and the land back movement are not just empty words. That was a statement by ally Alex Greco. Next up, we have a statement on behalf of Gabrielle Spear, who is a poet, history educator, and abolitionist who resides on the land of Lenape and Canarsie in Brooklyn, New York. And her statement will be read by Elsa Colfin.
I'm sharing this on behalf of Gabrielle Spear. As a descendant of Sicilian immigrants who settled in Philadelphia on the land of the Lenni Lenape, I stand in solidarity with the fight to maintain Indigenous Peoples Day as a celebrated Philadelphia holiday. Christopher Columbus represents the viciousness of settler colonialism, anti-blackness, and imperialism, so it is not surprising that there are those like Councilmember Squila who wish to venerate his image and preserve it at all costs. For centuries, Christopher Columbus has been utilized as a way to slyly flaunt white power under the guise of Italian cultural celebration. There is no doubt that Italian Americans faced discrimination and xenophobia in this country for many years upon arrival, always measured against blackness and mocked for their closeness to it. The reality is Italian Americans escaped this xenophobia through access to citizenship and housing rights. Italian Americans traded poor and working class solidarity with fellow black workers for assimilation into white supremacy, a staple of American culture. Italian Americans do not need legal protection under the law, as Councilmember Squila's lawsuit suggests, for we are already protected by our whiteness. As Italian Americans, our source of dignity and self-worth is not the genocidal legacy of Christopher Columbus, but pride in our radical labor organizing history, our art and music culture, and of course our incredible cuisine. Instead of venerating one of history's most wretched figures, it is time we reckon with our own complicity in colonialism and join with Indigenous communities in speaking truth to power.
Thank you again to all of you here for coming and standing with Indigenous Peoples Day Philly in solidarity. We have a closing danza by Kampatlanetsi Danza Azteca de Anahuac, and then some closing remarks.
Go!
Galaxy, Danza Azteca de Anuak.
We lift our hands and spirit to give thanks to the spirit of the east, the place of Quetzalcoatl, the first light in the morning. Lastly but not least, we give thanks to Mother Earth because she has the kindness and loving heart to give us food, shelter, and give life to every creature that crawls upon her. We give thanks for us, the humans, habitating this land, for having water, for having the air to breathe, for having fire to stay in our heart to keep us alive with emotions. We give thanks for the earth we walk on. We navigate this planet, and we walk upon this earth that was once walked by our ancestors from all nations. We give thanks to Mother Earth for being here, for being always in this planet, for us, for our generations, and for the future to come.
Thank you again to Kampalanetsi, Dansa Azteca de Anahuac, and to all of our incredible speakers tonight. One more big round of applause for everyone. Thank you again to all of you for taking the time tonight to be in solidarity with Indigenous Peoples Day in Philadelphia. We condemn this lawsuit and call on all of you to help us uphold the rights of Indigenous peoples. There are several upcoming opportunities for you to support Indigenous Peoples Day Philly. Please come sign our petition. We have a table over here where you can get some information about our statement, our petition, and ways that you can get involved with Indigenous Peoples Day Philly. Indigenous Peoples Day Philly will also be facilitating an educational workshop on Saturday, August 28th, where you will have the opportunity to learn from Indigenous leaders and to brainstorm how we can begin to indigenize the schools, libraries, medias, and the city. You can find more information on our Facebook page and our website. Lastly, join our movement, get involved. Visit our website to find out how you can get involved, how you can volunteer, be a board member, partner with us, present at our annual Indigenous Peoples Day celebration. Like us on Facebook and Instagram. Our handle is @IPD Philly. And spread the word. Help us defend Indigenous Peoples Day in Philadelphia, in the state, in the nation. We look forward to your continued support and hope to see you at our upcoming events to condemn this frivolous lawsuit and abolish Columbus Day once and for all. Mahalo nui.
Chabtume Kapotial. So thank you and until soon. We'll see you again.